Hello and welcome to this demo. So in the previous demo, we actually discussed what is data mining, what are its practical applications and how is it used, uh, what are the different algorithms supported by Microsoft, etc. So in this demo, we would be more or less concentrating and working with a little bit of data, trying to use some of those 9 algorithms that is provided by SQL Server data mining. So basically, to cut the long story short, let's just start off with something like, what actually does mining provide for you? What is the value add that it gives you? So if you think about it, there's a lot of data around us, and basically in your day by day you would be asked certain questions which you need to answer using the data provided, but as such in these circumstances you will find that maybe not the just simple SQL TSQL queries may not actually get those answers which your business actually demands. So these questions could actually be answered by actually looking at certain patterns that your data might produce. For example, say if you want to know how many cars person owns, basically you start looking at data like how far does he actually stay from his office, or how many children does he have, what is his annual income, and basically how many children does it have, so on and so forth. So accordingly you come to a situation where you can start predicting certain things, but this cannot be generally possible by just firing some sort of queries. You need to actually use some sort of sophisticated algorithms, and that's where mining actually comes into picture. So using data mining, you can actually start predicting, you can actually start creating a model which predicts some sort of values that can actually be incurred using some past values. And basically Microsoft provides about 9 algorithms which you could use in order to build a solid training model and start predicting the future. So Microsoft actually provides two main tools. One is the Microsoft Excel, and second is Business Intelligence Development Studio. Microsoft Excel is generally used by executives. It's much more easier to use, hence much more flexible in terms of the overall uh, user scenario. So much more easier actually. The other is basically more aimed towards the developers, that is the Business Intelligence Development Studio. There you can actually start creating some mining models, defining some training data, etc., and starting to actually start analyzing different models and coming up with some perfect model which will suit your business needs, and actually do some prediction also. So let's just quickly jump into a small demo. In this demo, what we will try to do is we'll load some data and then try to predict how many cars will a particular person buy in the coming years. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly open Business Intelligence Development Studio. Let's take some examples using bids for now and then base. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new analysis service project, and let me call this as, say, a decision tree, and I'll put it under a folder called decision tree, and I'll call it as decision tree. Click on OK, and it's going to create the typical folders for me, which generally analysis service does on its own. If I open Solution Explorer, you'll see that some of the folders are already created for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly define a data source, and I do have AdventureWorks installed on my machine, so I'm going to just reuse that table, and I'm going to just use my test account, training PC, and click on next, and let this be the same. The next I'm going to create a data source view, and let me just use some table from here, say prospective buyer, I'll add this table, click on next, click on finish. So it has added this table for me. Let me just quickly explore some data so that you guys get an idea of what kind of data we are dealing with. So basically this is a very simple table which has the first name, last name, middle name, marital status, gender, the number of children, number of cars owned, etc., and so on and so forth. Right. So what we are going to do is, let me just close this, and I'm going to create a mining structure right now. Clicking on next. I'm going to use the existing relational database, and so this is a step where basically we choose what kind of algorithm we need to use. For this example, let's keep it pretty simple. I'm going to predict using the existing data using Microsoft decision trees. So let me just finish this off, and basically it's going to ask me what is going to be your input and what you need to actually predict and what is going to be the key column. So in this case, what I need to predict is the number of cars owned. So let me just check on that, and what I need to feed into the mining model is basically the gender, then I need the marital status, I need number of children at home, what else, let's see, I need total children, maybe the state province code, and yeah, the occupation definitely. Then I might need to give it a key, so I'm going to give it the prospect alternate key. So okay, so I have just defined a brief model for my purpose right now, and I'm going to click on next. So basically I need to configure this as to say what is going to be my content type. Is my marital status being a discrete type or a continuous type? So I generally use the detect, and it's basically just rectifies according to a trend of data. Click on next, and then basically it just says how many percentage of data is going to be used for testing. So basically if there are say 1000 rows and I say use 300 rows from it for testing purposes, that means the prediction is going to happen on the remaining 700 rows. So the use of this would be that if you were to compare an ideal scenario with an existing scenario, this gives a perfect view of how your prediction is going on. We'll dig more into this when you actually see the mining model working live. So for now I'm just going to click on next, and then it gives me a summary of this. What do you need, what do you want this mining structure to be called? I'm going to call this as prospective buyer using decision tree. Just keep it a very simple name. Click on finish. Okay, so I have a mining structure defined over here. So I need to deploy this. So before that, some of the settings that I need to do, I'll just double click on data source, make sure I provide the impersonation information correctly. This is fine, this is okay, and let me also do a quick check on the server name. On deployment, I'll just change this to my training server. Click on OK. And then basically we are good now. Let us just deploy this. If I go to mining model viewer, it's going to pop up a small message saying that we need to deploy this project. So go ahead and click on yes. It's going to deploy it and process it. And let me browse its content. Alright, so processing is complete. Let me just close all these boxes, and now what you see here is basically a decision tree. So let me just collapse all the levels initially, and if you just look at the legend, it basically, let me just expand this a little bit. Yeah, so it basically says that the value 0, there are 305 cases, and it's represented as a green color bar in this decision tree. Now let's just look at the number of cars being 2. That is, when would be a situation when people would buy at least 2 cars? That is basically a blue line, or say at least 1 car, that will be a red line. So I'm going to expand to the first level, and it's basically going to categorize it to 2 parts. So when you have the total children is equal to 0, you have this much amount. of, that is about 126 cases. When you have total children as 1, you have total children as 4, and so on and so forth. So in this whole bar I see that the total number of children is equal to 1. Let me just expand this. It started categorizing as occupation, and the total number of children is 1 and the occupation is not management, then there is a high probability that that particular person will have at least one car. So this is how you start analyzing each of them. Like for example, if you need to analyze people who might have say 2 cars, right? So that is this blue over here. So you have the highest quantity when children is equal to 3. So a family which has at least 3 children and the number of children at home is not equal to 4, there is a strong possibility that people do go for 4 cars or 2 cars, I'm sorry. So this is how you start expanding your tree and studying the whole mining model as such. So the second example that I can probably give you is how to determine whether a customer would be profitable or not. So in short, you call it as profitability analysis. So let's do this way. Let's try to build 4 models out of this and try to analyze which is the best model for this one. So if you see at the mining models, currently we have just one mining model, that is the Microsoft decision trees. So what I'm going to do over here is add a couple of other mining models. So let me add the clustering model, and I'm going to actually choose Microsoft clustering in this and click on OK. And so if you see, I'm going to take the same set of inputs and I'm going to actually start predicting the number of cars owned. So I'm going to add a second mining or a third mining model, and I'm going to call this as neural network. And as the name suggests, I'm going to use the Microsoft neural network algorithm in this. And the fourth would be say logistic regression, and I'm going to actually start predicting using Microsoft logistic regression. So I have 4 mining models ready with me, and basically it does essentially the same things of taking the respective inputs and predicting the number of cars that is owned by that particular person. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to process all the models, basically deploy them and process them. And let me run this. Okay, so this has been done. I'm going to close this. Okay, so now if I look at the